I wanted to welcome you to this week's edition of the Thought Project. It's a project I'm doing out here while I'm living in the Charlottesville area. It's a project that I basically put together in order to go through a certain series of events. This week's edition actually had a longer version. It was a half hour long. This is going to be a much shorter version. We'll go through several topics very quickly. You'll have to keep up with my talking speed. Sorry. YouTube only allows for about 15 minutes performances before I have to go through a long process of verifying the video and just doing a bunch of other short that I'm not going to do. What I want to go through this week is sort of talk about some topics from previous shows. For me, a lot of people know I went through a long process of dealing with extortion and frankly dealing with the Russian mafia in the U.S. related to the entertainment industry. And one thing I want to explain is that I have never been signed to any U.S. agencies, ever. In fact, none internationally either. Whatever I've done, whether it's been TV interviews, journalism articles, whatever, always been independent, always represent myself. I was somebody who decided a long time ago after looking at the amount of abuse in Hollywood, and especially after a really nasty meeting with an agency head like 20 years ago that was really disastrous, that I just never wanted to be bothered with the industry. I don't even want to travel to LA, frankly. It's a really nasty industry. There's a lot of problems with it as far as Hollywood goes. Certainly the English government, India's government, Bollywood, Australia's government seem to handle their entertainment industries much better and don't have any problems with prostitution. But frankly, I found that a fair number of actors and actresses are actually being asked to work as prostitutes by the actual agencies. And if you're not Russian, that's really just the way it's going to go. And so I don't even think I have a view of the industry that most people would have. It's certainly not something I enjoy to think too much about sometimes. But I think it's important for a thought project because I was somebody that was trained to work in it, and I ended up going on to become an influencer. I had a blog that went up to 500, 600,000 hits a month, Reporter.com, which I retired in 2019. And I actually had problems with a person who was related to the agency, which is Russian run in here in the U.S., and don't ask me why they're still operating, I don't know. But they basically ended up hacking the blog, and I wasn't really able to monetize it, although I did actually get, appearances from it and was also able to actually make money as an independent writer because of it. Noting once again, I was not actually signed with any agency at the time. And I have, of course, changed careers. I went back to school, and I'm now in healthcare. And that's been much better for me. The one thing I would say to anybody who's ever gone through any blackmail or extortion schemes or anything, it was really long and difficult because so many people fought for me and were on my side. It was just incredibly difficult because I was stuck in a network of traffickers and had to get out. And I was always moved by how many people worked so hard to help me get out. At the same time, I've always been really shocked by how difficult it was to put an end to it and how long it actually took. So that was kind of frightening. But it took me over 15 years to put an end to it. And the scary part is when I met with this agency head like 20 years ago, he actually told my face that he was going to have a whole bunch of material stored for me and never pay me. I'm going to tell you one thing very quickly. If you're someone who actually owes me money, and I did writing work for you, TV scripts, film scripts, I have a particular plan for a UFC fighter and didn't get paid for it. And the woman actually won her match, by the way. You need to get paid. You need to pay me. And you have to pay me. You can't pay someone who pretends to be a family. Can't pay somebody who lies and pretends to be my agent. Can't pay a fake manager. Got to pay me. That's U.S. employment law. Got to pay the person directly. Keep yourself safe. Keep your business safe. Don't ever get into the situation of paying some weird third-party person where there may not be a real contract or a contractual relationship. For me personally, today I'm 42 years old. I have no idea where this goes. But what I do know is that the guy who started the extortion scheme was proven to be a KGB operative. Stupidly well-trained, straight out of a Russian asset's mouth, who worked for the U.S. government and was involved in Russian relations and knew for a fact and could verify that he actually didn't have true U.S. citizenship and, as far as we know, not true U.S. citizenship. He was, in fact, working for the KGB and the government of Russia. So who knows how long he'd been allowed to stay in this country. I do mean the U.S. I don't expect there's really any countries that would take him back, frankly, except for Russia or possibly China. But here's the thing. You probably wonder a little bit why influencers have become so popular in the last 20 years. A lot of that has to do with the fact that this was an idea I posited for the U.S. government, but since there's so many people who don't really work in the Hollywood industry, and who had the experiences I had, because I didn't just talk to one Asian American like that. I talked to several people who were actually up in the industry who said that in order to be in it, I would have to work as a prostitute because I wasn't Russian. Apparently, if you're Russian mafia, you don't have to actually sing, be able to act, or do anything. You actually can just hang out and they'll steal material from other people and give it to you to use for free. And then you get to make a whole bunch of money off of it, and the rest of us who actually worked hard don't get any money from it or credit, or apparently have to deal with just being threatened for years. I kid, but the point is that there was just something very strange about the whole process as far as I was concerned. And I'm still waiting to see how the U.S. government chooses to solve it because so much work had to be done. There are several congressmen that I would thank in my life experiences just for the way they handle things. Congressman Paul Ryan from Wisconsin, Jim Nussle, neither are in Congress anymore, Senator Jim Talent, Senator McCain. You all did a lot of hard work, especially back in the 2000s. This issue was really at the forefront. A lot of changes really did have to be made. If you think any of it's a joke, consider how angry Joss Whedon was after they cut off his supply, because he's definitely someone that's in with one of these organizations. And he literally threatened to have Paul Ryan raped and murdered over it. There's actually a lobbyist that worked for the agency that we had to throw out of GOP events because she was lobbying to keep people as slaves, basically. Unpaid, threatened, working for free. It's crazy. It's crazy to think it could go on in the U.S., but it shows you how much emphasis still needs to be put on ending trafficking in this country and focusing on the more sophisticated versions of trafficking that go on, because traffickers are not unsophisticated. They tend to be very sophisticated people. There's a few things about Russian culture that always really bothered me that I was never impressed by. One was their practice, especially among their elites and those that have trained for the KGB and some of their special services of, they marry and they have these contracts, but then the men will often be given not what's a hall pass, but try to create relationships with women who are not Russian, which they treat really bizarrely in ways that are more close to than the wives that they actually marry. It's really disturbing. I know other women who've gone through this. It's just really strange, but they treat them like chew toys, basically. It's that they're really obsessive over them, abuse them, are overly close with them, stalk them, and prey on them too. And then the wives will oftentimes demand money in return for the men to have those relationships. Well, I personally know that most people don't really have to put up with any of this, that they can actually fight it in the courts or fight it publicly. But there's been a bizarre push by Russians coming to the U.S. trying to bring their cultural practices that are really disgusting over here, and that's one of them. And it's something that's not accepted here. It's illegal in the U.S., and it's just basically, coupled up as a type of stalking. And there used to be a more lenient attitude towards it. People would write it off as a man with just, an obsession or an affair, and finally realized it was something much more disgusting and bizarre. And oftentimes I do the fact that the men engaging in it were people who were dissociative that had been abused in the Russian system and were somehow involved in intel, and then wanting to try to keep women as slaves who were not Russian, basically, for these bizarre relationships. Another example I would be is that I oftentimes would run into Russian people anytime someone will try to report an issue and say, well, that's just an allegation. Well, an allegation is an unfounded piece of evidence that has no supporting measures or evidence. And you need to be careful saying that to anyone, because you could actually be the one making the allegation. Because what is an allegation? An allegation is an unfounded piece of information related to a lawsuit or a criminal case, legally in the U.S. So be careful throwing around the term allegation, because the very use of it actually could be an allegation of itself, especially with something that's been proven publicly, has multiple forms of evidence, and has already been decided on. So don't use the term lightly. Here's another tip. One thing I noticed about Russian culture that I was always disgusted by, especially when I was growing up, is that there was a heavy grooming culture with kids. I do mean grooming for abuse, all kinds of abuse. And I actually dealt with an older Russian man who was just really gross that used to talk about strawberries and cherries in reference to kids, and was just really disgusting about it. And it was probably one of the most foul conversations I've ever had in my whole life. He called himself a very tribal leader and said he didn't have to have respect for children. And to this day, if I see any kind of Russian symbolism or strawberries and cherries around, I just get really grossed out by it. How do you ruin fruit? How do you ruin fresh fruit and vegetables? Like, that's the kind of behaviors you saw from their culture, especially among their elite. That's just really disgusting. And it's interesting to me because as I make these videos, I want people to understand this is not to be propaganda. This is based on my life experience in the U.S. This is based on years of dealing with having to provide, scripts, singing, songs, likeness, work for free. And witnessing this really bizarre groomer culture that they have with kids, it's just disgusting. I mean, there is a predominant issue with people from their culture or tied to their culture, no matter how they look, being groomers. I just want you to know that. Because there aren't many countries that actually have that strong a culture like that. I'm going to end the show today because I'm going to make sure I make my timeline for YouTube. The longer half-hour version is already on Facebook, and that's for people who, are my Facebook friends. You on here get the shortened version. So this week's song is going to be Tom Petty's Free Fallin'. Here you go right now. She's a good girl, loves her mama, loves Jesus and America too. She's a good girl, is crazy about Elvis, loves horses and her boyfriend too. And it's a long day, living in Reseda. There's a freeway running through the yard. And I'm a bad boy, 'cause I don't even miss her. I'm a bad boy for breaking her heart. And I'm free, free falling. And all the vampires walking through the valley move west down Ventura Boulevard. And all the bad boys are staying in the shadows, and the good girls are home with broken hearts. And I'm free, free falling. Yeah, I'm free, free falling. Free falling, now I'm free falling, now I'm free falling, now I'm free falling. I wanna glide down over Mount Holland. I wanna write her name in the sky. I'm gonna free fall out into nothing. I'm gonna leave this world for a while, and I'm free, free falling. Now I'm free, free falling. Oh! Free falling, now I'm free falling, now I'm free falling, now I'm free falling, yeah. And that is about this week's show. There's one more thing I want to note for you about Hollywood. There was always this big preponderance of evidence that there was something going on with the plastic surgery and this idea that they were focused on being really perfect. Actually, the preponderance of plastic surgery is related to the Russian mafia and the abuse of actors and actresses and singers, the public, and wanting to cover that up. I, for example, have a side of my face that's an even growth plate is messed up from an old injury. I don't want to be in an industry where they expect me to have that operated on and removed. I have a little scar on my wrist right here. I don't want to be in an industry would tell me I have to have that removed either. I think there's a lot to be said for independent performance and artwork and finding jobs and ways to make a living that are full of dignity and respect for yourself and for other people, and where you can get paid properly. And who knows what will ever happen with Hollywood. I think we'd all be better off without them, frankly, with the way that it's gone. I certainly know I wouldn't be poor today, and I would be doing a lot better without it, but I could also be a lot worse off too. So anyways, I hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you another time. Have a good week.